Welcome to another edition of Tree Service Marketing Profits Podcast. I'm your host, Wesley Smith with treeservicedigital.com. And we've got a business owner today in Minnesota sharing his story about the business, kind of how they got started, how they grew the business. And that's Hugo Tree. And Harry Olson here and Joey are on board to tell their story. Thanks, guys, for joining us. I appreciate you being here today.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It helps the community, helps the tree care industry, and people like hearing from other business owners. So, just to get started, I guess just share with us in the audience maybe how you guys got started or how you got started in the tree service business.
Sure. So I'll start out. I'm a second generation owner. So Hugo Tree started in 1997. I was actually started by my parents. My dad was a Asplin guy originally. He started out of the Chicago area, and then if everybody remembers the Dutch Elm Disease crisis, that moved from the central Wisconsin, kind of southern Wisconsin area into the Twin Cities. Him and a few of his guys that were working at Aspen at the time in the winter, they'd get laid off and they'd chase Dutch Elm up into the cities and do work for cash and whatnot, and that's how they got kind of stuck up here. They realized there was a ton of work with all the elm trees coming down. So got incorporated really in the late 70s with another company, and then moved forward from there. That company separated owners in 97. The other ownership continued on being they're now a local competitor. And then we branched off into Hugo Tree in 97. So with that being said, we really started in all of those really nasty backyard elm trees that were ones that people didn't want to touch. They were always dead. They were always over three buildings, a power line, a fence, driveways, cars, you name it. If they could be over it, they were over it. And that's where we got started. So we kind of took that old school mentality of, get in a harness, get to work, and just kind of move forward, stayed small. Those first few years, we were like three, four guys at the most. And then really from there, we didn't grow a whole lot until I took over in 2018. So we stayed sub 10 employees until 2018. When I took over, we were three full-time guys. John and Sid, who started the company, they were starting to shrink it down, getting ready to retire, kind of thinking nobody wants to take this over. I was fresh out of college and thought I can figure this out. How hard can it be? Already had a background, obviously working in trees, and enjoyed the work. And yeah, I really grew it into more of a full service tree company. We've moved into more land clearing type work, commercial work. We still specialize in hazardous, really difficult removals, using the specialized equipment and all that kind of stuff to get into the trees that other people are like, I'm not interested. And then now in 25, we started our media side, which was really to help kind of promote what we do, talk about industry standards, things that we're seeing, also try and get people more in touch with the tree community, not just because of all the diseases and everything that we're dealing with, but just how the tree world works. So that's kind of a really, really quick how we got to where we are now.
Love that. No, no, no. Getting out there and teaching the public about the tree industry and what you guys are doing up there. I think that's phenomenal because that's what's going to bring a lot of attention and visibility to your company. So I think that's amazing, man. And so you guys, so the company branched off and it was 1997, kind of ran small for 19 years, 20 years, kind of close to that. And it was a very specific tree disease species thing that was popping up as the reason the business started in the first place, right? Let's see, you just got so much work and it just kind of grew from there, I guess. Your dad, your parents.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, Dutch elm, everybody that has been around Dutch elm remembers that it used to be every boulevard had an elm tree on it. Everybody's backyard had an elm tree in it, especially in the Twin City area. It was a very popular tree to have planted and they were everywhere. And so when Dutch elm went through, that created a lot of work for guys that were willing to go up and deal with those big trees.
Now, were you guys just like removing a lot of them, or is it more of like a treatment type care type thing, or are they just toast once it takes over?
So for us, what we were doing was all of the ones that were toast that were at the end of their lifespan. We didn't really do any of the treatment work on most of these trees, mostly because we were called in by municipalities and by homeowners who were recommended to us from municipalities for their tree that had now died and was condemned. We had a really nurturing relationship with the Minneapolis Forestry Department early on in our company history. And that's really what helped us become prominent in the removal community, and especially that dangerous removal, difficult removal, dead tree removal. community here in the cities. And we really didn't leave the Minneapolis area for, oh boy, probably until almost 2010. We worked from 1997 until 2010, just almost exclusively in the Minneapolis and nearby burbs. The first two.
That's a huge, widespread, sweeping like issue coming through, right?
Yeah, yeah. So
So 13 years kind of focused on that. And that was just kind of out of necessity. Like they needed the help
they
in
just
the
yeah,
area, the
the
community, and everything,
trees.
right?
Yeah, yeah. There was just that many dead elm trees, which was kind of the crazy part about it. So,
Wow.
and then once that started to slow down, the suburbs had really started to see a little bit more of a pop in Dutch elm, but also we started transitioning to some trimming work. We didn't really start PHC until probably about 2015, and even then it was pretty low key. It was a handful of clients, people that we were really concerned about the trees that they had in their yards because they were maybe the only shade tree. They might have been the only hardwood they had in their yard. A few of them had some. We have a couple of clients that have elm trees that are easily over 200 years old. I mean, they're just massive historic elm trees that, those ones we've worked with partners locally to help try and keep as in best of shape as possible. So that's really, it wasn't really until the last 10 years or so that we really got into that plant healthcare side and building out a plan or planning, trying to help people maintain what they have in their yard.
That's a big thing. Yeah, that's a big thing today is kind of saving trees and restoring them or replanting and just all those types of things that people maybe in the past kind of just didn't really think was an option or something like that. Nowadays you can actually save a lot of trees by doing treatment, PHC and all that stuff. And it's really cool, like interesting you guys' story starting out. It's like there's all, we do interviews with these tree service business owners all across the country, and there's always a different story on how they started, whether it's, somebody started in municipality work or residential work or commercial. And you guys had an issue up there with the Dutch Elm Disease. And so that's kind of how it spawned the business. And you guys are busy for 13 years just doing that.
Yeah, and I mean, to be totally honest, we still from time to time take down big Dutch elm trees, big trees, big elm trees that have died from Dutch elm that are in a tricky spot. It's amazing how many trees we had. I will say that the especially Minneapolis Forestry Program has done a really good job of promoting, if you have to remove one of these large elm trees, start replanting now. Or if you're looking at when emerald ash borer started to come into the state and really started to take off, there was a huge push throughout the metro area to be like, all right, if you have an ash tree, it's probably going to get this, it's probably going to die. We should really start thinking about planting now so that when these trees start to, come apart or when the municipalities decide that it's time to remove their boulevard trees, because we all know this, it's not cost effective to treat every ash tree in every scenario. They instead decided, let's start planting now and start planning for the future so that we still have a green landscape. We don't just have grass. So
Yeah, it's a good
that's been
idea.
a big change in our area.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so the Dutch elm tree, would you say those are some of the largest trees up in kind of your region up that way?
Yeah, I would say that our elm trees are they were probably some of our biggest hardwoods that we would have, deciduous hardwoods that we would have. You know, we had some really big ash trees. Green ash is green and white ash are both native here. So we had some really big ash trees before emerald ash borer came through. Oak trees are our other big hardwood that we keep up here. Also, obviously, like everybody else, we have silver maple everywhere because when the elm trees started coming down, we started planting silver maples for whatever reason. But we have a lot of those. But yeah, when the elm trees came down, the biggest difference was you used to, if you see the old pictures of like the streets in the cities, they were lined with these beautiful canopies. And, then you'd see them after Dutch elm comes through and all of those trees are gone. So
Wow.
that's
Yeah,
been
I'm
a,
in I'm
that's
in
been,
Georgia, so it's like the biggest ones down here, I think typically are like the oak trees, like different subset species of oak trees. Like there's like water oak, the white oak. There's a bunch of different oak species here. Those are generally, I think, the largest ones that we have down here. And I could be wrong. There could be some that are even bigger than that. But that's interesting. Just every area of the country's got different types of trees and the different regions and everything else. So
well,
I
and
don't know that those are native here, the elm trees. I'm not sure, you
I
know?
don't know if they're that far south for you guys. I know like Wisconsin, you'll see them. Iowa, you'll see them. We'll see them in the Dakotas a little bit. Um, But yeah, our elm trees, especially the American elms, which are kind of that's the when you think of a tree, the American elm's kind of the tree that everybody, it comes to their mind. It's the nice big trunk with a big beautiful canopy. They're canopies that spread 40 to 70 feet. The trees can be anywhere from 60 to 110 feet tall. They can be really big trees. And for us, again, historically, that was the only trees we really cut for a long time were those trees. So when Emerald
Wow.
Ash Borer, at least when that came around, we did have some experience. We knew what we were getting into.
That's
But
true. And that really hit a lot of different areas of the countries. We have clients that are still, in the thick of that, in different times of the year.
yep.
So we see that pretty often, marketing for that and things like that. So it sounds like you guys were really busy, had your plate full with this particular type of issue and project in the area until about 2013, I think you said, or 2010, something like that, maybe like about
Yep.
13
Yeah,
years.
those are really kind of 2010s is when it really started that's when we started, I think, to get past the bulk of the trees have been that were going to die were killed off. The trees that were being treated and maintained and taken care of were uh, on a protection plan, if you will. They were on a treatment plan, if you will. Some sort of plan was in place to help preserve those trees further. Um, so most of those trees, I think, have actually fared pretty well. The only caveat I would say with that is that we've had uh, this really strange water cycle the last probably 5, 6 years. So I think it was what, like 3 years ago we had that really bad drought. Yeah. Like 3 years ago, we had a really bad drought where we didn't get any rain for I think it was like almost 4 months. And it seemed like our elm trees and our oak trees really took a hit in that time span. And like the mature elms just could not weather that drought. Um, and then couple that with the fact that we went into a really cold winter, that's really all it took for us. And we started to lose some of those ones that we had treatment plans for. So yeah, that the weather has been a big effect on those ones that remain. Speaking of like ash trees, that's another one where for us, we always had cold winters, which would kill off the insects, help slow the progression of emerald ash borer. We had a couple of winters here that were really warm. Well, then all of a sudden it was like every ash tree you saw was toast, was
They're
just
able to just multiply a lot
yeah,
faster because there's not enough
you
cold
took it
weather.
off.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Awesome. Okay. Well, fast forward just a little bit. So then you come in around 2018, sort of take over the company and all of that. And it sounds like for a better part of 20 years or so, it was mainly just kind of demand based. The business was kind of running, maybe one crew,
yep.
type size of company, and just had plenty of work to do. And then you come in and make some changes and probably have some more aspirations or different ones from the generation prior. Sometimes there's changes there, sometimes there's not, but it sounds like you have. And so from that point, what all did you do to kind of grow the company or kind of put marketing into place to just kind of get more eyeballs and visibility on the business?
Yeah, so one of the big things that I did when I came in is right away I mean, we all know the old school guys who they show up and you got guys in tank tops that are cut off sleeves and they're wearing jean shorts and boots with socks up mid shin or whatever. I came in and I branded everybody. So first things first is I was like, all right, everybody's gonna wear something that says Hugo Tree on it, has our logo on it, the tree up, tree down logo on it. We're gonna all at least look like we work with each other, not just a bunch of random dudes that showed up with chainsaws. So that was kind of the first thing I really did. From there, I digitalized our processes. So up until 2018, we did all of our proposal work, all of our invoicing, all of our payroll. Basically, everything short of filing taxes was done by hand on paper. So I digitalized pretty much all of our products. Or all of our processes, meaning our payroll went to a digital format. Our operations started running on a digital format, which that really helped, I guess, kind of spread our word of mouth base, which was really the thing that we kept us going for years. It was just someone would recommend us, and then they would have to call a number that someone wrote down on a notepad, and I printed up business cards. I got us all, we got ourselves kind of set up with actual, not necessarily marketing tools, if you will, but just branding, making it so that you're not just calling a tree guy, you're calling Hugo Tree, that company that did that really nice job down the street for me. Here's their business card, call them. So we started there. In about 2020, actually during COVID, I worked on getting our Facebook profile set up and updating our Google profile and actually having a Google profile that was a link to the business so people could find us and call us and all that kind of stuff. We had it, but it was really rudimentary. We had a website built probably in 2006, and had not been touched since 2006.
We've seen our share of those.
Yeah. So in 22, I hired a company to help us build a new website so that we could actually get a website that uh, kind of pushed us into the 21st century, but also more so professionalized who we were, kind of show a little bit more of what we do, have some relevant information on it, also have some updated photos. We haven't run some of those old High Ranger buckets in 25 years. Our website had them all over it. It was just kind of one of those things where it was like little changes to help really get ourselves a little bit more uh, up to date, a little more professional, make it look like we actually are a business that cares. And then in terms of advertising, really didn't do a ton of like, I don't want to say digital advertising, but focused on the kind of homegrown, here at home, doing the local newspapers, a couple of local restaurants, putting ads up with them. Trying to be more involved in the community is really where we started. And in 25, that's really where we started to get into the more heavy advertising, working through Facebook, working with Google or Instagram, working through Google Ads. A couple of my guys teamed up with Joey here and they designed flyers and started going around to all the local restaurants and saying, is it okay if we hang a flyer up here? Doing some more actual marketing work. It's not necessarily, I don't want to say it's, broad stroke brush, if you will, but it's targeting areas that we don't necessarily work very heavily in, but they're neighboring areas we do. So trying to help build a little bit more of a reputation in some areas that maybe we don't have a big footprint in and just kind of again organically grow the business that way. Um, rather than sending out just mass mailings or stuff that, as far as I've always been told or heard, it doesn't seem to work super well. So,
Yeah, good strategic growth, good strategic marketing growth, not trying to completely double or triple in 1 year, but just continue to push that message and push the visibility forward, every quarter, further and further and further. Just keep up the activity. And a couple cool things you said. So if you guys are getting value from this, like and subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment if you got a question or whatnot. And we'll come back and answer it whenever we can. But yeah, that's really kind of what it's all about. It's just putting all these different pieces together, all these levers. So you got your trucks wrapped, you've got the crews with shirts on, you've got flyers up in coffee shops and restaurants, you've got Facebook ads maybe running, or at least Facebook postings. You got the
mhm.
website people find. You got, your social media profiles, and everything's consistent, right? You've got the Hugo Tree logo that you've got your color scheme. And so people start remembering that the more often they see it over and over. And maybe you're doing some text marketing, through your CRM or through another service where people can get reminded to refer you to a friend, family, or neighbor for, a referral fee, or, just to remind them that you're out there, right? And so then also getting reviews on your Google business profile, all those things that you set up and do, they start paying dividends a year, 2, 3 years down the road because it just keeps growing and expanding, and your footprint grows and expands and you touch more and more people. So I think as long as people just keep seeing you over and over again, that's the name of the game to getting that repeat referral business and just more calls in general. So has that been kind of you guys' experience? Like you put yourself out there, the business cards, everything just kind of multiplies, right?
Yeah, and what I would say with that is that, and this is something that I would give to any other owner. Like the one piece of advice I can give you is like nail down your operations so that when you go out and do your marketing, you can go out and back it up. So if you go out and you say, I'm the best tree service provider in this area, you better go out and back it up because the one thing I can tell you is that, yeah, you might mess up that individual client's project, but the 10 prospective clients that were in that neighborhood, now they're not even going to think about calling you. They're going to find somebody else. And that was really the thing that we had to do at the start of 2025 is we kind of had to rebuild some of that reputation. We had gotten, our operations had gotten a little bit too, I don't want to say out of touch, but just hadn't gotten, they started to kind of run into the wall of not enough people in place to actually watch over what was happening day in, day out. I was getting a little too high out strung on trying to get the business running because like as an owner, right, you're always at the top down view and you're trying to go, how do I make this keep working? And then from a smaller perspective, you have to be like, well, what happens when, one of your greenhorns doesn't rake that yard as well as it should have been raked? Doesn't clean up, doesn't blow the sawdust off the sidewalk. Well, that shows right back. So now if you're advertising like, hey, or if you're throwing out on Facebook, look at this great job we did, and then you go out and you're like, oh my God, they left divots everywhere, you know, that kicks back immediately. And people might see it and be like, yeah, I saw this Facebook ad for this tree company. They're called Hugo Tree, and then their neighbor has a bad experience with you. Now your ad didn't do anything. Worse and worse yet, maybe you get a comment back on your ad that says you guys don't actually work like this. So why are you advertising this?
Right.
So that was really another thing too, is like our operations this year, we really dialed in on quality control, optimization, really making sure that when we go out and do a project, it's done to its fullest potential. We're minimizing any chances of damage. We're taking as much of the risk out of the project as possible. So that when people see our ads, they can go, "Hey, have you heard of?" And someone will say, "Yeah, how did you hear about them?" And they say, "Well, we saw them on Facebook or on Google or on Instagram, or we got a business card because we stopped and talked." And the other person might say, whoever we had worked for would say back, "Yeah, they do a fantastic job. They back it up." So that's really, I think it's a twofold process. And a lot of guys can get, I feel like you can get really focused on like, I need to get my brand up to date. I need to get my digital footprint out there. But you have to be able to back it up. Like there has to be something on the back end to make sure that you actually are doing what you're saying you're going to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
all good points there. Go ahead. You were going to say something, Joey.
that's kind of what we've been trying to highlight too with the social media stuff is, we're trying to make cool videos to catch attention, but at the same time showing the care that we put into what we're doing and that we do deliver what we say we're going to deliver. And yeah, that comes down to hanging stuff in restaurants and still getting that community base while trying to build more of an online base too.
Yeah, go deeper in the same area, get thicker in that zip code in that area, get more and more and more customers because then the referrals kind of snowball. People know who you are, the memorability is there, they see you over and over and over again. And a couple of things you said there that was very key points. So if you guys, in the audience that are watching later or right now, whatever, when you do start, deciding you want to scale the business and grow the business, it's easy to put the cart before the horse, right? Put your foot on the gas and do tons of marketing, get lots and lots more calls coming in, but can you fulfill at the high level that you want to do, like for your business? Like can you do the projects and can you complete the work and do everything you want to do based on kind of your sort of core values and mission statement as far as taking care of your customers, cleaning up, cleaner than you found it, that type of thing. And it's easy to do that. It's kind of a juggling act, I imagine, too, because you keep increasing the market. Like we do that here at Tree Service Digital. We do a lot of marketing and advertising. And then, we've got a good team now, but it's always a moving target to keep building that team with the right people and the right components, right? And getting the right processes in place.
100%. And I think like for us, the biggest issue that we ran into is like really from like 2020-ish until about 2024, we had this problem where we ran into this constant, we're 3 to 6 months out on new work, meaning we're our homegrown kind of idea of let's do this little bit of marketing work, meaning, flyers, business cards, having guys branded, having the equipment wrapped, having the trucks with, fresh decals on them and our numbers on stuff. We did all that. Then we were starting to get all this call volume, and all of a sudden we get to, end of September, and we're like, we have a 3.5 month backlog, and we're about to roll into winter where our working days basically disappear. Um, and then you have to deal with upset clients, people who have been on your books now for 10 or 12 or 15 months.
They waited it out, and now they're not going to get the service.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now they're not going to get their service. And then it starts to kind of snowball into other issues as well in terms of like, so you have all of these like, say, trimming work or removal work that you didn't get done in the fall. Well, now you want to try and get it done in the spring when you're supposed to be doing treatments or when you're supposed to be, going out and getting your stumps done or doing other projects that are supposed to help facilitate a complete project. And then it's snowball effect, right? So what we really focused on at the end of 24 coming into 25 was we need to make sure our operations can actually keep up with what we're marketing. Made a few equipment changes, brought in some extra personnel with better experience, guys from other larger companies that were looking for a change, bring them in, get a little bit, uh, I guess I don't want to say uh, like better skill per se, but more so just the firepower of guys that have been around the industry a little longer. Bring some people in that had some skill. They're not cheap, but bite the bullet. Help build your operations into something that actually can keep up with what you're marketing. So that now when Joey goes out and he films something and someone calls up and they go, "Yeah, I saw your film on Facebook and I really like it. Can I get a consultation?" And when our guy that goes out to do the consultation work comes out, and they go, "Well, how far out are you?" We don't have to say, "Well, if you sign up now, we'll get to you maybe next year." Now we can go, "Yeah, if you sign up now, 6 to 8 weeks, we'll be there at the most." So that was really the goal with the operations side, is to help keep it up to date with the marketing side. And again, kind of like you said, that cart before the horse. If you get your marketing to the point where it just blows up and all of a sudden You're getting all these calls and generating all these leads. That's great. But if you can't actually get the work done, all you're going to do is upset people.
Yeah,
So
and waste your ad spend and budget, as well.
exactly,
So
exactly.
it's a little bit of both. Yeah, we've I think I always try to lay this tip out there. It's on the SBA website, Small Business Administration website. But what does the government know? That's kind of debatable, I guess. But it does make a lot of sense for business owners. Typically, you want to spend about 5% at least minimum on your gross revenue on advertising and marketing, and that's going
Yep.
to help you get the word out. Get the message out, really trying to, put your foot on the gas somewhat to kind of grow the business. So just for simple math, if you're doing $1 million a year in revenue for your business, that's around $50,000 a year in advertising and marketing, give or
Mhm.
take. Some people are a little less. People that are aggressive and really want to grow, push forward and spend maybe up to 10%. We've got clients that spend 10 to 15% of their gross revenue on marketing. Not all with us, but just overall their spend. They've got billboards, radio, direct mail, you name it, and they're really trying to grow. And that's kind of how you get that double digit growth annually. But again, it goes back to are your operations in place? Do you have everything kind of ready? Multiple crews where you don't have to push people out 3, 4, 5 months, things like that. And another thing you were talking about too is the branding and the professional trucks and the image and everything else. Would you say that has a good impression and a good impact on hiring good team members because they see like Hugo Trees on the up and up, they look professional, they look the part. I think I want to go work over there. Does that kind of help out a lot?
I think so I'm going to give this a two-prong answer. So yes, absolutely. One of the things that I would say is that, and I mean, put yourself in an employee's shoes. This is kind of how I viewed it, is if I showed up to work every day to work tree work, which let's all be honest here, this is not an easy job. You're going to get poked in the face with sticks. You're going to get hit with something when you don't expect it. We all get chainsaw nicks and burns from, touching a hot exhaust while climbing or whatever. We're all going to have these, day in, day out. I don't want to call them, like bad days, but some days can be really tough. This can be a brutal industry to work in. The last thing I want to do is jump in that forwarding machine that I'm not sure if it's going to start this time. It might not. When you see that equipment as a guy that works in this industry or as a gal that works in this industry, that right there to me is going to be, I'd rather go somewhere that's interested in promoting equipment. Even if that just means making sure it's well maintained equipment so that I know for a fact when I go there to do my job, that equipment is safe and it's going to run. It's going to do its job. The other thing I would say is that yes, 100% by investing in newer equipment, you absolutely attract better talent, especially more sophisticated equipment. You start talking about, and I mean, it's all over everything right now, but like stuff like Cenoboggins and excavators with big attachments on them and knuckle boom cranes and, rotating telehandlers. You start investing in that type of equipment, which again, this is a huge, scary investment, especially if you're a sub-$1 million company. um, that type of equipment draws attention to you as a business that is honestly, from an employee standpoint, almost as good as offering extra money because you are taking the time to give somebody the opportunity to work what they like doing, cutting trees, without actually having to physically put themselves in harm's way. So they still get to work outside in the tree industry, be around it, but they don't have to be the guy up there, pulling on that chainsaw that doesn't want to start because the gas is bad, or, doesn't have to be the guy that hits the metal post in the bottom cut, getting that stub off. Now he gets to be the guy that, yeah, I picked that whole tree apart. Now I'm going to go do another one. And you know what? I'm not even sore. I'm not going home and my shoulder hurts. I'm not going home and my knee hurts. I didn't twist an ankle today. So I think the equipment side of it, having updated equipment is huge. Having well-maintained equipment is probably equally as huge. But then also being willing to get the sophisticated stuff, get the stuff that looks more complex than it is. Giving guys the opportunity to run that stuff too, being willing as an owner, and I can say this from experience. One of the scariest things you're going to do is hand a guy a $700,000 piece of equipment and go learn it. See if you can master this because you don't know. I mean, you don't truly know what that guy's capable of till he gives it a shot. You might do a little bit of prodding here and there to see if he's got the right qualifications or they've got the right qualifications. But at the end of the day, until they do it, you don't know. But what I'll say is if you can get yourself past that jump, that from, I think, an employee standpoint is just a huge, huge bump in confidence. It's a huge, plus in terms of when I show up to work, I get to do some pretty cool stuff. I'm working with cool equipment. I'm not
Yeah.
showing up with a rusty old truck.
It's like there's a sense of pride to it. I started in 2020 and I came from 10 years of cooking before that. I had no tree experience. And yeah, he put me in a nifty lift that was brand new within about 3 months of me starting. And I was up cutting trees. And there's definitely a sense of pride in operating those bigger things of equipment and having wraps on them and having them look professional rather than just kind of hunkering down the road in a beat up truck and hoping for the best.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. We hear that consistently across the board. I always like to ask that question because I think it seeds the vision to people that may have started their business and maybe have been reluctant to be like, oh, I don't want to be like this big, loud tree service company with my branding all over the place and kind of want to stay under the radar. Yeah, but if you do, nobody knows who you are when you're riding around town and, your truck could pass by thousands and thousands of people a day. Or if it's sitting in a neighborhood for a day or two, hundreds of people that live in that neighborhood are coming and going all day. So it's just almost free advertising once you pay, for the wrap or whatever on your vehicles or on your equipment. So I just think it's a great idea. And I always like to touch on that point. I think it's super important. Now you guys are doing kind of residential, commercial, land clearing, right of way, excavation, demolition work type thing. What would you say like the percentages of your business are, like maybe residential, commercial to land clearing, things like that?
Sure. So when we talk commercial, we're really grouping everything that's land clearing, excavation, demolition, all into kind of the commercial grouping, if you will. We're not necessarily talking like commercial tree trimming projects. And then when we talk about residential, we group in our municipal contracts with that. So we do work with municipalities, but it's mostly in a residential type setting. We're doing diseased trees in backyards at individual addresses. That split right now is somewhere between, it sits between about 62 and 65% commercial, somewhere between 35 and 40% residential, depending on the year. Um, but typically speaking, in the last 5 years, we're more heavily commercial than we are residential. That's deliberate. We, being in the Midwest, being in Minnesota, we have a lot of competition in the residential sector. Residential sector is full up here of guys that, and this is not a knock on any of it, but on guys that are, as you would say, pickup truck and saw guys. They have a set of gear, they have a chainsaw. Um, a lot of people up here burn wood. They have cabins up north that they'll take the wood from their tree that they had cut down in their backyard in the cities, bring it up north and burn it up there. So that we have a lot of that kind of competition in the residential sector, which makes the residential sector tough to compete in at our size. So when you get to and that's not to say that there's not companies that compete heavily in residential, but we have found our niche in the commercial side. The excavation and demolition is really kind of an add-on to our land clearing stuff. So we got into land clearing basically just doing small, 10, 20, 30 trees for a new gas station, new apartment building, doing an addition to a warehouse or something like that, to the point now where we're doing up to 100, 200 acre sites where they're going to put in a whole new subdivision. They're going to run, all new utilities, all new streets, etc. So for us, that side has really grown. There's not a lot of competition for us there in the terms of there's a handful of players that are pretty well marketed here that are in that game, and we play really well there. The residential work is still very much, and I think Joey will tell you this too. We very much hire guys into the residential sector, work there, see what they have, teach them skills, see if they're willing to be in the job, see if they're willing to do the hard work, drag trees out from backyards, because we still do that on a more than regular basis. And if they're willing to survive there, then what we can do is move them to our commercial side or move them to where they're in a position where they split sides. They go between sides depending on where the needs are. And that's really how we've kind of trajected over the last couple of years. That's really our future growth path will probably be pretty similar to what we're running right about now. It'll probably end up being more of a 70-30 commercial to residential in the long term. But right now it's pretty consistent 60-65 commercial.
Okay. And that probably keeps you guys a little bit more consistent too, because there's repeat work and they're larger projects. So it keeps you busy for weeks and weeks or months and months on one project. Does that also kind of smooth out the slow season a little bit, or do you guys have to kind of really pull back during those winter months?
It certainly helps the slow season. So slow season for us, and this is kind of a new one for us, is that we have this bat restriction. So long-eared bats, northern long-eared bats, they're an endangered species. They roost in the basically in the river valleys, kind of in the caves and in the any dead trees. That's I guess a breeding spot for them, or a roosting spot for them. So we have to be very conscious of when we can remove trees. Most of our work along, especially waterways, has to happen from, if I remember right, it's November 15th until March 15th. That's kind of the season that we can do that work. So winter turns into if there's any sort of riverbank or stream bank type work that needs to get done, we'll do the tree work for that stuff in the winter. Anything that happens in swamps or wet areas, lowland areas, that'll happen in winter. Um, you know, in the summer, we'll do more of our kind of farm field edges or doing our street right away work, doing reconstruction projects. That's where we'll really find a lot of that work is in the summer. So the commercial has certainly helped us iron out kind of the ups and downs, if you will, of the winter months. This week we're in a wicked cold snap. It's 10 below zero all day for the daytime highs, and we're going to 30 below at night. We're not working much. We can't keep anything running when it's this cold.
That's true. Yeah.
So for, like this week, yeah, we're not going to work much. But when we get the opportunity in the winter to work, there is work to be done, which is a really nice thing to have. Residentially speaking, we do a lot of oak trimming, a lot of elm pruning in the winter. We do a ton of ash tree work in the winter as well, because a lot of times those ash trees are in wet areas. So now with frozen ground, we can move towards them. But yeah, residential wise, it's a lot quieter than the commercial side in the winter.
Awesome. Okay. So just kind of continued to expand the business, probably stay like 60/40, 70/30, kind of, commercial versus residential or land clearing, those types of things. And you already had the equipment. So it's probably a natural progression like demolition and things like that, excavation, because it all kind of goes hand in hand. Once you make that investment in the equipment, sure, I can do that now, right? If the job opens up.
Completely. Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
And we had gotten asked from a couple of bigger clients of ours, and they were like, "Hey, since you're already out here cutting the trees down, how about you wreck that old shed? How about you take down that barn or this little single family home that, hasn't been occupied in 25 years?" And it just kind of naturally uh, grew from a necessity that a contractor that we would work with would, have, or a home builder we would work with would have. And now we've kind of really been able to build on that. And again, like you say, the equipment, it's already in the fleet. All we have to do is take that attachment off, put that attachment on, go to work. So it's really gotten that simple, which is awesome. Our technology that we play with today is unbelievably leaps and bounds ahead of what it was 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's absurd, man. Some of the new things that are coming out. When you go to the TCI Expo or the Arbor Expo, you see some of this new equipment. It's crazy. Like every year it gets better, it seems like, or bigger and kind of more mechanical, more, less human involvement. Like the machine does a lot of the work. Kind of you
Yep.
were talking about the Cinnabogans and the pal fingers and things like that. Like we see a lot of those. A couple of our clients get them, and then we take images of them and market them and things like that. So it's amazing what they're coming out with. It really does help kind of, I think, kind of like shrink the size of your crew,
Mhm.
and at the same time help you be more efficient and get more work done.
Well, and I think the selling point for employees too would also be now you have an operation that's safer. That flat out, if you don't have to hold a chainsaw, you're not going to cut yourself with a chainsaw. So if you can suddenly go up and cut a tree down and you don't have to cut a tree, hold a chainsaw except for the base cut, your chances of cutting yourself statistically are significantly less. And that was really our big drive. And actually, the guy, our founder, John, when he founded the company, one of his dreams, and back then he was looking at stick cranes, just good old fashioned straight boom stick cranes. And he was like, how do we put a saw on the end of a stick crane so we can pick trees apart? So guys don't have to go up there and physically make the cuts. And then obviously we saw these knuckle boom cranes come out, and everybody's like, when John saw that, he was just like, holy cow, what is going on? This was my idea. Somebody stole my idea. I love it. Let's go find one. So, again, that's kind of I guess the stepping stone, if you will. And again, kind of going back to that conversation about equipment and marketing, when people see stuff like that coming out, you know, when they know guys aren't in danger, when they know that thing is secure, that piece that's coming off is secure, that's over the house, uh, that sells in the marketing side too. So like when Joey goes out and he grabs footage of that and people see it on our Facebook or see it on our Instagram or on our Google profile, they see that and they go, that's who I want to hire because I don't have to think about it. They know what they're doing. They have the right equipment. And it's not to knock the skill of our trade, the skill that it takes to cut a tree the old fashioned way, being in a harness in a tree rigging is incredible. we always used to joke it takes a special kind of breed of guy or girl to go up there and take these trees apart. Nowadays, it's not as bad. You don't have that fear factor the same way that it used to be. It's not a, you have to have a guy who's willing to be up there anymore. So,
That's
yeah.
true. Yeah, it's about the investment these days, and then, if you got the workload and you've got the backlog and you've got, years and years of this consistency, then it's a good decision to make, when you get to that point. I think any kind of business investment, you got to weigh the pros and the cons to that. So sounds like, thanks for sharing like all your marketing stuff. So social media, a lot of that, video marketing, some Google, some search campaigns. You got the flyers in the restaurants, handing out business cards, getting referrals. You've got a CRM. Everything's digital now. Your customer base, invoicing, estimates, and things like that. Any new kind of advertising or marketing initiatives, maybe in 2026 that you hadn't done in the past that maybe this year you're gonna test out a little bit?
Yeah, so we're this year we're going to shoot for we really want to do some email marketing type work, meaning start actually having a maybe a twice a year touch with clients that are currently in our systems. Meaning, it doesn't even have to be a hey, now's your time to get signed up. It can just be a spring update. You need to be out there watering or seeding or fertilizing or etc. Fall update, you should be doing this, to help protect your trees. Let's make sure they get through winter okay. Possibly we've tossed around the idea of like if we're having strange weather events, say we're going into a drought, you know, put an email out using them again, our system to talk to all of the current clients and say, you should get your trees watered. You should be watering them this amount, every other day, every day, every week, something along those lines, based on what we're seeing for the current rainfalls. And again, just kind of trying to help get more in contact with people that we've already worked for. Keep our, like you said, keep our name relevant, keep it at the front of people's heads. Really try and lock down our areas that we're working in, meaning when people think, oh, I've got a tree that's got to get done, we want them to think about us. So, getting our Google ads a little bit more up to speed. That's the next piece too for us is that we haven't really played with it much. We've run some really basic Google ads. We tied into Facebook and Instagram because that's probably the easiest to really get set up and roll with. So this spring, one of the things Joey and I are going to work on is sitting down and actually building out Google Ads, trying to figure out how to make that all work. So yeah, I think the next big thing for us is going to be certainly those two: email marketing work, getting those emails out a couple times a year. It's just a touch, if you will, to the clients in the database, and then also getting our Google Ads really cemented so that they can hopefully help us continue to grow what we already have.
Yeah,
I think
kind
those are great options. Yeah, go ahead, Joey.
of a bit of an educational angle. It's more than just purely marketing, delivering something to future clients before we're even clients. I think is kind of the biggest goal for us, getting to build that trust before we even work for them at all.
Just providing that value. Yeah. And a lot of the video marketing you're doing is doing that, which is awesome. It's showing exactly what you guys do on a day-to-day basis on their property. And then also, yeah, educational email newsletters are great. You could do a quarterly one about each new season and what to expect with trees or what you need to be doing if you find a tree looking like this or looking like that. Here's what to do. Or yeah, quarterly tip would be great. Bi-yearly, annually, that'd be fine too. All those are good touch points, right? Because people do open their email. Email's got, I think they say roughly 25 to 35% open rate typically, whereas text marketing is about a 98% open rate typically because people are always on their phones. So it just depends on kind of which way you'd want to go. We do a little bit of both, and those are always nice. They kind of get the people kind of calling and booking appointments and things like that. But all those are great. If you've got a customer database, that is gold, right? You can continue to market to those people. Oh yeah, let me refer them. My neighbor just asked about tree work a week ago. Let me get their name because they got the email from you guys, so they remember it. So then they go give it to their neighbor, or friend, or family, or whatever. So all those are great campaigns. Getting definitely close to coming up. Want to be respectful of you guys' time. You guys have shared a lot of great nuggets so far. If there's a business owner out there and they're really looking to grow and expand, or maybe they're hitting a rough patch in their company, you guys have been around for quite some time. I know kind of you took over in 2018, but it's got 20 plus years of history prior to that. What would you tell the business owner that's like really trying to make it, really trying to put the dots together and just get out there and hustle? A lot of it's hustle in the early years, right?
Yeah. So one of the things that, and this is kind of that first $500,000 in revenue that you make, that is all about you. That's, are you good at your job? Meaning, do you know how to do tree work? Are you good at interfacing with clients? Can you do the sale? Can you close the sale? Can you follow up afterwards? Will you take the criticism without losing your cool, without having any other issues? Your marketing at that level is going to be pretty bare bones, right? Like, so you talked about, I think it was 5% of your gross revenue should be your marketing scheme. So your marketing at that level, 5% of 500,000 does not buy you a lot. So it's going to be pretty bare bones. You know, that first 500,000, that's all about you as an individual business owner. So you have to be willing to work the hours, put in the time, uh, be the face, but also be the background, be all the managing side. That next 500 to a million, that's all about getting your initial team set up. That's your first really good crew, if you will. That's cycling through some people, maybe, finding a guy that's a good foreman, finding somebody who's a good climber, good cutter, etc. Um, I think that's where you build your marketing on, is that 500 to million mark. Anything past a million, you've already got the process in place, but that 500 to a million mark, I think, is really where you start to, that's when you're going to, as an owner, start to think more beyond just the operation of day to day. And you're going to think, how do I grow this into a larger snowball? Which that's probably a terrible analogy for anybody who lives where they don't get snow. So I apologize about that. But yeah, if you're going to get something, if you want to build it bigger than that, than the $1 million mark, you're going to build that process in that 500 to a million. That's where you're going to build that process. And again, like you say, the marketing side of it is going to be built there. The operations side is going to be built there. Your quality controls are going to be built there. That's where you're going to take all your hard knocks. The grind from a million to three, that's just flat out making business mistakes that you're not going to be able to fundamentally understand until you make them. That's learning what's a good purchase versus a bad purchase, learning if I
Failing forward, right?
yeah,
Failing forward.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's learning if my marketing idea was a good idea or not. Did I spend too much on Google Ads this month and made, got 3 leads out of it? Again, that's the million to three is just a grind of learning the mistakes that you don't understand. Once you make that 3 million mark, then after that, it's just replication. It's just really replicating everything beyond that. And if you're somebody and you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, I want to try doing my own thing, just know I really want people to understand this. That first 500 grand is hard. That's 7 days a week. That's when you're sick, when you don't feel good, when your foot hurts, when your arm hurts. That first 500 grand is a grind. So, I watched it when we started Hugo Tree. I watched that grind. That grind is brutal. If you don't have the mental fortitude to have really bad days and spin around tomorrow and go out and put on your game face for a client that you got to meet with to hopefully secure some more work, it's going to be really tough to succeed. If you get through that first 500 and you find a way into that 500 to a million mark, you can start to really have a lot of fun with this work. I mean, with tree work in general, this is a great industry to be in. There's a lot happening. We're making, huge technological advancements. Our employees are getting skills that, it took us decades to learn. Now they can start learning it in 1 to 3 years. So I really think, like, if you're a new owner coming in, learning how to dial in that process, that operations process from that 500 to million mark, that would be, make that your first goal. Get to that number, you know.
That's good stuff. Yeah, it's you got to get out there, fail forward, as you mentioned, a couple of good tips there. And then it's that business owner, entrepreneur grit that's going to get you from 0 to 500K and then 500K to a million and then doubling and tripling from there.
Right.
Right. You got to continue to just make mistakes and keep moving forward, keep getting better, putting processes in place and just kind of just sticking it out. A lot of success is just people that don't give up. It's like it's going to be tough some years, more so than other years, but you just keep moving forward. You just keep going. You want this. You don't want what the alternative is, which is going back to work for somebody else. So you do know that this is what you want to do. So you just got to stick it out and keep rolling. Well, Harry, Joey, I appreciate your time, man. You guys provided tons of great nuggets. If you guys are watching this, like and subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment if you got a question, anything that they discussed or went over. We'll be happy to come back and answer it later. But if you guys ever have any updates at Hugo Tree, let us know, man. Come back on and be a guest and give us the update.
Right on. Thank
Yeah,
you, sir.
thank you.
Appreciate it, Wes.
Thank you, guys. All right, till the next video. We'll see you on the next one.